Thank you very much and good morning. And in case any of you are wondering what's a private sector guy doing in a place like this, let me tell you, my life got changed by Nana because I had the privilege of being a private sector guy doing some amount of social work till I spoke in the Delhi convening of this particular event. And after that, of course, Nana has been on my back. As you all know, Hotel California is what she is. You can, okay. So once you get into the Nana Hotel California, you can't get out. And I've been very privileged because of that, because since then, not only joined the board of AVPN, but also been on the board of UN Women and Educate Girls, and a whole bunch of other social venture partners. I know many of you are SVP and chaired it in India. And most important, actually tried to understand how scale happens in the social sector. I mean, Nana already talked about financing, we talked a little bit about technology, and of course, I think we mentioned digital. And that has really been my intersection, if you will, of understanding how the whole technology revolution in this country and in parts of Asia, and I'll come back to that, private sector, social sector, and most important in this part of the world, which is not part of my title or the title of my session, but the role of government. Because unfortunately, even today, I find people in the social sector saying that, look, do we really have to talk to government? I mean, is there something that we can do in spite of government or without government? And my honest submission to you is, nothing of scale will happen in this country or in South Asia without a very active role of government. So I will talk to you a little bit about that. My own background being entirely in technology, and as all of you know, many of us built companies. I was delighted to find 3 people from my first company, Aptech, right here. And companies like Aptech and IIT started seeding the idea that everybody, and when I say everybody, particularly from the middle class, should have an understanding of technology. We were all delighted in 2014, when Prime Minister Modi first came to power, that he spoke about the National Digital Literacy Mission. For those of you who like Hindi, it's the Digital Saksharta Abhiyan. And many of us got very excited, because we said, this is what the country needs. Because any of you know, the technology sector will know that this $220 billion global industry that we're so proud of, sadly, was initially created out of 7 cities. And if you went beyond these 7 cities, it kind of dropped away very, very rapidly. So we kind of took the National Digital Literacy Mission to heart. And I still remember we said, look, across, and at that time I was chairman of NASSCOM and NASSCOM Foundation. And we said, let's try to make this happen across 500 towns and cities in this country. Today, I'm delighted to say that if you look at the government, there is something called the National Optic Fiber Network, NOFN, which kind of stuttered a little bit in the first 5 years. But I promise you that within 2 years, you will have all 220,000 plus gram panchayats and all 650,000 villages in this country, last mile connectivity, 10 Mbps connectivity. That's great, because we were all waiting for this. I mean, the owner of this magnificent complex, Mukesh Bhai, Mukesh talks about 5G and then 6G, and I know, given the scale of the Reliance operation and the Jio operation, that we will make it happen. But the beauty of it is that we'll suddenly have outstanding technology, quantum computing, 5G, 6G, you name it, and we won't know what to do with it. Because we haven't got those young 250 million disenfranchised Indians in this country to really participate in what should be an inclusive growth. Absolutely the same thing. I mean, when I was running Aptech, we were in Bangladesh, we were in Sri Lanka, we were in Bhutan, we are in Myanmar, and we found the same level of aspiration problem is not what we were not trying to address. So people who wanted to be digitally literate went on to the US and Europe and became multimillionaires, which is the story of Indians in Silicon Valley. But what happens to Abhay in the slum of Yerwada in Pune, who nobody ever told him that, look, boss, you can also be included. All he was being addressed by was political parties who said, look, we'll give you 500 rupees, go campaign for us. And that's the real thing that we need to address and do. Because I think if AVPN can contribute to this part of the world, it is in making scale happen. And what Nana rightly talked about, whether it's pool funds or giving people a pathway to contribute is amazing. I was looking at the SDGs outside and I said, look, I mean, what is it that we're really trying to do? First and foremost, of course, in our country, and of course, very much in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, is better education. The second is what I talked about, which is inclusion. Better jobs and making sure that communities progress through livelihoods is probably the third most important. And I won't say the others are not important, don't get me wrong. But smart cities, what Nofin is trying to do with smart villages, and of course, if you look at partnerships, it's probably the only way to grow. Which is the point I was going to make, that if you look at partnerships, let me give you the example of something that we're very proud of. My CEO, Ruchi Mathur, who's IIM Ahmedabad, batch of 95, has dedicated her life to the social sector. We now have a team of 400 people. And what are we trying to accomplish? We are saying that, look, we will only rest when 1 million people who had no hope in life are able to see themselves joining the so-called digital entities that are contributing, or for that matter, any services sector job. And we found, and this is a story I want to tell you, but then I'll come back to the theory from that. And at that time, I was running this big company in Pune called Zensar, and Ruchi was actually running social responsibility there. And I still remember we set up this entity in Pune called Pune City Connect. The whole idea was 6 CEOs got together, private sector, and said, we give money anyway in an individual capacity, in a corporate capacity to various tasks. How about we come together and work with the government to make scale happen? And I still remember we went and met the then municipal commissioner. And he laughed a little and said, look, guys, just pay your taxes and we'll take care of the city, which is a classic response you'll get from many, many people. So we said, okay, great. And we tried to solve the traffic problem in Pune. But as many of you know who have been to our city, I mean, as we keep joking, in the US, they drive on the right side of the road. In UK, we drive on the left of the road. In Pune, we drive on whatever is left of the road. Okay, that's that. And here we are trying to solve the traffic problem with lousy roads. Okay, and then one fine morning, a gentleman called Kunal Kumar came in as commissioner. And I remember Ruchi and I were in Pune launching a little digital literacy center, because that was our passion in those days. And Kunal said, guys, great. Oh, what about the rest of Pune? So we said, boss, that's your problem. The rest of Pune is not our problem. We do a little bit. He said, no, I'll give you a challenge. You guys talk about Pune City Connect, etc. You work with me and we will make the entire 650 slum communities of Pune transformed. We didn't believe him then. Today we are touching 480 skills communities, slum communities. We have, no, please clap for me after 5 years when I tell you mission accomplished. Because right now all we have done is 110,000 slum youth in Pune have been touched. 10,000, in fact, we have an event next month to celebrate 10,000 people in good jobs, mind you. And I think we're finding that and I'll tell you the model, because the way it worked is, it's a phenomenal model. I mean, we all worry about government. Why? Because the minute you go and talk about a great idea, they'll say, oh, it's not invented here, we'll do it, like happened to us. The minute you talk about a scale project, they'll say, oh, we got to float a tender, and the lowest guy will get the bid, etc., etc. And Kunal and I sat together and we said, how do we build a model by which government does what it's supposed to do, what's been elected to do, private sector does what it wants to do and doesn't know how to do, and civil society, the social sector, comes to the party. So the model is very simple. Okay, even this year, 25 crores or more of money will be spent by the Pune Municipal Corporation in building these wonderful edifices, which we call skills lighthouses. We will raise from maybe 60, 70 corporates and the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation an equivalent amount to run and support these people who are running those centers. And civil society will completely participate, because every skills entity, whether it's not-for-profit or for-profit in Pune, we've mapped, and we know how to use them. So the beauty of it is, this is not an exclusive model. This is not anybody making money. This is not the government saying that, look, we are holier than thou, but it's everybody coming together. So to my mind, the collaborative space, okay, where we can actually say, this is our entity, or this is our kind of place where we will do our work, can be satisfied. And just to give you a sense, today we are in Delhi, we are starting in Telangana, we are starting in Uttar Pradesh in a very big way, because I know Ruchi is in UP on Monday, trying to see how many cities we can transform together. And of course, we'll talk to Naina about pool funds and everything else. But the important part is, there is a level of collaboration going on. And I was actually talking to one of the ministers in Sri Lanka and said, look, you got to rebuild your country. Let's try and make these models work. The same thing is happening with Educate Girls, which I'm sure Safina Hussain has been a very active participant in AVPN ever since I joined her board. And we're finding that, we kind of almost saturated the tribal girl child going back to schools in the state of Rajasthan, moved to MP, work is almost done. And now, of course, we're doing UP in a big way. And we know we will raise enough capital to make that happen. We're just embarking on a strategy 3.0. And again, all these elements of partnerships, the private sector, the social sector, and government. Okay, because when you're working with tribal girls in all these states, you cannot do it in the absence of government support. Because otherwise you can get into all kinds of issues. But here is an amazing use of technology, because right from, like all we techies dream about, the best use of analytics and predictive analytics. Today we know how a young woman or young girl in Pali, Rajasthan might drop out of school 2 years from now, because we are tracking the way the family is moving, the way the teachers are treating her, etc., etc. And I'm truly excited about that. What we're trying to do with UN Women, for instance, identifying smaller entities which are doing stuff and try to scale them very, very substantially, which includes people like Lodhas and so many other big private sector people who want to contribute to this area. So the point I'm making is that I believe South Asia, and I think, Naina, you mentioned that very, very eloquently, saying we need to bring the whole Asia models to India, to Asia. But as you know, thanks to Ukraine, thanks to so many other COVID and other issues, what was a really galloping economy, Bangladesh, for instance. Bangladesh was actually at some point doing almost as well, if not better than India. But they've been in trouble. Sri Lanka, of course, been devastated at this point of time. But we need to get many of you who are interested in not only India, but parts of Asia, to come to the party. We need to ensure that public-private partnerships of the kind I just mentioned anecdotally really make things happen. Just to give you a couple of other examples, there are 2 entities I'm working with which are just focusing on women artisans. Okay, how does the tribal woman with some skill, how does her skill get honed, and how do we take her to the global markets? Technology can make anything happen for you. The whole idea of technology, and my friend Akhil will, of course, totally agree, that you really don't need space, you don't need intervention. Some space in terms of counseling and some places like the lighthouses that we have will make that happen. The second, of course, is digital. As I said, many, many NGOs can participate in this digital revolution. And just to close with this, when we started the digital literacy movement, we actually found that the villages were still not there in digital. And I'll give you one last anecdote and close. I remember speaking with our member of parliament, Vandana Chavan, who's an MP in the Rajya Sabha. And Vandana said, you guys are doing this in the cities. How about looking at the first village we can find and showing how this model will work? And I remember we went to this little village called Sudumbre, which is just outside Pune, Talegaon actually. And we said, 3,200 people in the village. We mapped out everybody, figured that there were 600 youth who should benefit from digital literacy, and set up a center with 4 computers there and a trainer. 3 months later, we went back and said, oh my God, let's see, maybe at least 200 out of those 600 youth have got transformed. And we still found the youth hanging around in the sun and doing nothing. So we went and asked them in Marathi, saying, why? What's going on? He said, no, we don't get a chance to go to the digital literacy center. So we said, how's that happening? And we went there, and he found one 80-year-old woman and one 60-year-old woman sitting and assiduously working on the computer. And we went and asked the 80-year-old woman, what are you doing? She said, look, I'll tell you a secret. My son goes to the neighboring village and comes back and says that, look, I'm finding a great husband for my daughter. She says, I go into the computer, check out what is called the Satbara extract, which tells me actually how much land this guy has, and tell my son he's fooling you. Wow. So then we went to the other woman and said, look, what are you doing, Tai? So Tai says, and she's about 50. She says, look, my husband works in Bombay a lot, and he goes to Mumbai and comes back with his sari and says that, look, I paid 800 rupees for this sari. I go to Flipkart and tell him you could have bought it for 250 bucks. So I don't know whether we're doing a service or a disservice, okay? But we are certainly making the world a more transparent and inclusive workplace. So thank you very much. I look forward to this conference, and I hope many of you will look at this opportunity to scale through partnerships and not scale in our own little neck of the woods. Thank you.